what drew you to this world? I mean, you're not generally the horror guy.
No, I'd never done a horror film before.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as a horror film, essentially, because I really love Scott's work, and what I love about his work in Exorcism of Emily Rose and Sinister is they're just character-driven stories that happen to be scary, and that's my favourite kind of horror film, if you want to call it such. So that's how I viewed this. It was a story about a guy who was, living in an incredibly brutal world, who doesn't believe in any of this stuff, and he's kind of forced to acknowledge it through things that happened to him. And I just thought that was a really interesting journey, and I felt like I was in really great hands with Scott, and selfishly wanted to, jump in. That was great fun.
Now, you get to work with the real guy. You got to talk to him. What did you say? What was that like, experiencing what he lived through and does? Yeah,
well, it was really interesting. It's always potentially really awkward when you meet someone who is real and your character is based on. But we hit it off straight away. We both love motorcycles, and in fact, most of the time we were talking about bikes. And I didn't feel comfortable kind of drilling him for information. Our relationship wasn't based on that. I'd read a little bit of stuff, and to me it was just more important to just hang out with him and get a sense of him and his energy, rather than use him as a resource. I'm not comfortable with that. So that's what I did. I just kind of let him be him, and he let me be me, and we just kind of, found our way. His job on the set was as a police advisor.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't to kind of get in my ear about how to play him, So we were both very respectful of each other's role.
What did you find was the most challenging portraying him, especially with him there?
Well, like I say, it wasn't. There were probably a couple of scenes where I was conscious of him being there, and he just removed himself because he probably just wasn't comfortable himself, and that was more to do with some family stuff. But there was never a moment where I was like, can Ralph not be here today? Like I didn't mind having him around at all. So, it was never really an issue.
Do you, as Eric, look at these stories? Do you find them fascinating? Do you watch, like The Exorcism or The Exorcist or The Exorcism of Emily Rose? Has that ever sparked your interest as a viewer?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I love Scott's movies, and was scared as a kid of some of the early genre horror films of the 70s and 80s. So I was fascinated to get a chance to be in one of those films. I'd never done anything in this genre before, and it was super interesting. And they're very meticulous. They're a combination of being very free flowing, and also timing is very, very important. So working with Scott was great in that regard.
What is the one thing you remember that you took away from this role?
Just how crazy Joel is, really. And Scott's actually a great guy to hang out with, and I was expecting I don't know who I was going to be meeting, the guy that creates these kind of films. I was expecting someone, really dark and internal, and he's not at all. He's a very light, gregarious, very funny guy, Scott. So it was a real ride.